Carter Krishna are here for the Florida Squeeze. May not be a big vote changer because it's difficult for endorsements in this day and age to change voters' minds, particularly in a state as transient as Florida. But three new co-chairs have joined the Republicans for Harris in Florida, and these are, in terms of historical names in the state of Florida, massive names in the Republican Party. Let's start with Comptroller Bob Milligan, who was the comptroller from 1995 to 2003. He was very, very popular statewide, won re-election overwhelmingly in 98, and endorsed John McCain in the 2000 Republican primaries for president. Has drifted away from the Republican Party the last few years. But Milligan, I don't believe, has ever endorsed a Democrat for president. He is now endorsing Kamala Harris. Milligan said, quote, "I know something about leadership and character and how critical they are for those with power and responsibility. Donald Trump has proven that he lacks the character to lead." And Milligan, in addition to being the comptroller, which was rolled into the CFO office, that and the insurance commissioner were rolled into the CFO office in our cabinet reorganization in the early 2000s. He was a former Marine Corps lieutenant general, so he knows a little something about leadership. Former Republican operative and really one of the great characters in Florida politics, and particularly on the GOP side, Max Stepanovich, and he was the chief of staff to Bob Martinez. I don't think Jeb Bush becomes the political figure he does without Stepanovich's help. Stepanovich has been very outspoken about Trump for a number of years. He has endorsed Kamala Harris, and he says of Trump, he is a blustering, name-calling bully who only cares about himself. If we had been in the 5th grade together, I would have fought him every week, and my father would have brought me ice cream for doing so. Stepanovich is also a critic of Governor DeSantis as well, and had supported former Governor Charlie Crist, who of course was a Republican when he was elected governor, became an independent, and eventually tried to run for governor again twice as a Democrat. Was nominated twice by the Democratic Party. He had supported Charlie Crist previously. And then you have Jim Smith, who is a great figure in Florida politics. Was the Attorney General. He was a Democrat when he was the Attorney General. Ran for governor in 1986. Lost a runoff to Steve Padgett. That was very much a conservative Democrat in Smith against a very liberal Democrat in Steve Padgett, who had been a state rep from Jacksonville and was also one of the leading trial lawyers in the state. After that, Jim Smith switched parties. Bob Martinez appointed him as the Secretary of State when George Firestone resigned. And then he was reelected subsequently as Secretary of State and ran for governor in 94, lost in the primary to Jeb Bush, but then was a lobbyist and then got appointed Secretary of State again by Jeb Bush. Important figure in Republican politics, and in fact, co-founded a lobbying firm with Brian Ballard, who was a very close associate now of Donald Trump. Smith said in a statement released by the Harris campaign, quote, "I recognize the threat that Donald Trump poses to the foundation stones of our democracy, which are the rule of law and public confidence in free and fair elections." And he continued, "Trump believes he is above the law, and he tells his followers that any elections he and his allies do not win are rigged. It's wrong and it's dangerous. Kamala Harris believes no one is above the law, and she believes in American democracy." And so in terms of people who've been around Florida like myself, seeing Milligan, Smith, and Stepanovich all back Kamala Harris, it just kind of tells you the stature. These are men of great stature. As is a woman of great stature, Paula Dockery, former state house member, former state senator, who endorsed Kamala Harris many months ago and has been a co-chair nationally of the Republicans for Harris. Senator Dockery was a critic of Rick Scott her last few years in the state Senate. Great advocate for high-speed rail and a great advocate for government transparency and reform. She I believe endorsed or at least supported Hillary Clinton in 2016, and Joe Biden in 2020. She did endorse, and now is co-chair nationally of this Republicans for Harris. So you've got Paula Dockery, Jim Smith, and Bob Milligan, three highly competent and highly respected former Republican elected officials. Two of them elected statewide. The third in Paula Dockery, who was a statewide figure while she was in the state Senate. And then in Max Stepanovich, you have one of the great Republican leaders in this state through the years, all endorsing Kamala Harris. Pretty big statement for those of us who are junkies of Florida politics. Maybe it doesn't move votes, but I think it's still a fairly big deal, at least in our political circle.